There were a lot of stories which circulated. Some I was a part of, some I was not. But I know these stories are all true. But unfortunately, I can't repeat most of these stories because I know those guys, some of them are still sailing, and the ones that aren't are still around. So out of respect for them, I'll leave them out. But there are a couple that I just have to tell. I'm the Saipan Sailor. This is The Last Gypsy, the second segment. I After watching the first segment of this series, a good friend of mine who I worked with on my last job, he sent me a text message telling me a story about someone he recognized in the video. And it was hilarious, but I can't repeat that. I will tell a story of a couple of people that were on my ship while the ship was in Diego Garcia. Now, Diego Garcia is an island in the southern part of the Indian Ocean. It's a British territory. It's part of the British Indian Ocean territories. And the U.S. Navy rents that island, and they established an armory there. It's a Navy base. And there are 27 anchorages there. So during Desert Storm, Desert Shield, Desert Storm, Enduring Freedom, and Iraqi Freedom, the ships were all pre-positioned there. And when they got word, then one by one, they started heading up to the Gulf of Oman in a convoy. These stories were after that, when we were back in Diego and just sat there all the time. I'll talk about Diego in my next segment. Interesting place. We had one kid, one fella. He was from Georgia, real country boy. This kid was. Apparently, his father was a retired radio operator, and kid worked in my department. And he was good. I used him a few times. I'll give him that. He was a good worker. But he just couldn't be away from his girlfriend. And every chance he got, he was emailing her. That wasn't all. One day, at the dinner table, the lunch table, I forget which, he was sitting across from me. We were eating. And out of the blue, he pops this question. He goes, "What's their policy on having pets on board?" I said, "Pets? It's a military ship. I don't think they're going to allow pets." But then out of curiosity, I had to ask. I said, "What do you have in mind?" He says, "Well, I was going to go ashore and grab one of those chickens." I kept a straight face. I think all I said at that point was, "Yeah, I don't think that's a good idea." In fact, the British have rules on that island, and one of them are you can't touch any living thing that isn't human. In fact, they had a certain type of crab on the island called a coconut crab, which ate coconuts. Now, if you like crab, you can imagine eating a crab that tasted like coconut, but they were strictly forbidden. Couldn't touch them. Not that people didn't, but it was a law there. So that was forgotten about. I think the fellow lasted maybe a month and a half, 2 months, I don't know. And one day I guess he had enough. He couldn't be away from his girlfriend any longer. He goes running up to the captain's office one day. And he says, I have to use your phone. My father said, you have a phone and I can use it anytime. The captain says, well, I don't know and I don't care who your father is, but I'm the captain of the ship. You don't you don't barge in my office making demands. Well, I think he let the kid use the phone anyway, and I don't know how it was arranged, but they sent him home. Now, from what I understand, he just packed his bags and got on the launch and went ashore, and the captain had to hunt him down, and finally caught up to him at the airport. I told the kid, hey, some of us have a life, okay? I mean, at least you could have done was hang around until I was ready to pay you. So he paid him off at the airport. And the kid went home. Well, after he was gone, sometime later I was talking with somebody. I told that story, what he asked me at lunch. Sailors, by the end of the day, that story already made its way topside. And when we were lined up in front of the captain's office to sign for our allotment, if you don't know what an allotment is, it's a bi-monthly check that we can have wired into our bank or our wife's bank or whoever, so they can have money. Well, the captain had a piece of paper clipped on his door. It was a drawing of a chicken with that red circle and a line through it. We all knew what it meant. He had a sense of humor too. There was one lady that came on board in the deck department, and she didn't last long either. She started complaining that she was seeing ghosts and hearing voices down in the cargo hold. And the chief mate, all he can do is roll his eyes, And I think eventually she got a hold of the Commodore. Now the Commodore is the guy who's actually in charge of that ship and the rest of that fleet. Those ships were owned by the Military Sealift Command, which is a civilian branch of the Navy. And so there's different regions. There's a European region, there's a Far East region. I don't know, I can't remember how many regions. We were in the region. They had a fleet of ships, and Diego Garcia and I think Saipan as well. I think the same Commodore was in charge of both places. Somehow or another, she called him up and was complaining. He called the captain, said, get her off that ship, send her home. There is another story I want to tell, which took place before I came on board. but I just can't. I can't do it. But that's all for now. I'll come up with a couple more stories. Like I said, we had some characters out there. I'm the Saipan Sailor, and this has been segment 2 of The Last Gypsy.